Pretty much every first-person shooter today owes something to the original Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein 3D is the great granddaddy of the genre. It helped popularize corridor shooters and featured a wacky alternate history of World War II, complete with a boss battle with a mechanized Hitler. Well, those pesky Nazis are at it again. They're messing around with a dark energy source called Black Sun, and it's up to our boy, BJ Blazkowicz, to stop them. So does this new Wolfenstein live up to the family name? Let's start with the presentation.
Agent Blazkowicz, you have an annoying tendency to appear at the worst possible moment.
Wolfenstein has an interesting retro feel to it. You can tell the developers have a love of the source material. Everything has a crazy Indiana Jones meets Hellboy kind of vibe. Even BJ has the poofiest hero hair to ever grace the 1940s. In terms of graphics, the character models look pretty good, and there's some impressive moments when things start blowing up. However, it's nothing that really stands out. The weapons are your mix of standard World War II era stuff and crazy sci-fi guns. You can actually upgrade the stats on all your weapons, which is cool, but since there's not a lot of Nazi gold that you find in the game, you basically have to pick one down and max it out. My personal favorites are the flamethrower and the face-melting particle cannon, because melting Nazis' faces never gets old. Never. Wolfenstein surprised me at first because it's not a pure linear shooter like most shooters are these days. In many ways, it's a throwback to its famous progenitor, Wolfenstein 3D. Basically, you operate out of the city of Eisenstadt, and the city streets act as a hub for your missions. You wander around killing Germans, and you also talk to people to get missions, or you go to the black market to upgrade your guns. Now, this sounds pretty cool in theory, but don't get too excited. What's disappointing about Wolfenstein is that the developers have a germ of a great idea, but they play it safe. So instead of some open-world GTA-style shooter, you really get this really small town where all you have to do is to go somewhere, is go out a door, turn a couple of corners, and then you're there. In addition to the guns, you also have access to paranormal powers that can act as special kinds of second sight, bullet time, shields. Well, you know, it's the standard stuff we see in a lot of shooters that have paranormal elements. It's cool how some of this is integrated in Wolfenstein, though. I mean, you can use these powers to travel in another dimension called the Veil. This opens up a lot of alternate routes in the game. It also lets you explore a little more to find some of that Nazi gold to upgrade your weapons, and it encourages you to just look around a bit. But there are these little Black Sun particle fountains that recharge your powers that are pretty much everywhere. So you have this stuff on pretty much all the time. I will say that there are some awesome sequences in the game. There are moments when everything just clicks and you start having a lot of fun. The zero gravity stuff is particularly good. You just wish that these moments weren't as few and far between. Instead, you're spending a lot of your time wandering the familiar looking streets looking for stuff to do. The multiplayer is your standard first-person shooter fare. I mean, there's team deathmatch, there's an objective mode, there's a stopwatch mode that's kind of like challenges the two sides to outdo each other's times. There are 3 classes, but the game kind of has this, been there, done that feeling. Wolfenstein is not a bad game at all. It's a capable shooter with a few interesting ideas. However, it's like the developer didn't trust itself to go all out with these ideas. If they had just made the world bigger and less linear, they could have had something that really stood out. As it is now, it just feels like another World War II shooter that's fun but not very memorable. For the full written review, head over to IGN.com.